Find yourself a booth, order up a cold one. This is the Spring Bar.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Spring Bar. Glad to have you here. I am Florida Mike, today with my co-host Joe and the OC, KC, and as you can see, we are joined by the gentlemen behind Foster Watch Company, Everett and Christian. Gentlemen, how are we all doing today?
Woo! Outstanding.
Doing great.
Hey, doing great. Thanks, guys, for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Hey, we are more than glad to have you guys with us. So this is our first episode of 2023, and as I've always heard, whatever you do the first day of the year is pretty much how you spend the rest of your year. And if that means, as a show, we get to interview a bunch of cool people and talk to watch brands, and I'm okay with that. If this sets the,
I have never heard that, because if that sets the tone, no, I spend most of the day on the couch in a hangover, and
That explains a lot.
there you go.
That explains 2022 for me right there.
All right, so let's get right into it. We're skipping over new watches today. I don't think any of us have anything new anyways. We got a lot of wrist checks to get through. Well, nobody wants to hear your two watches. Put them up on Instagram like everybody else, Joe.
Got him.
Thanks.
All right, so guest of honor, the Christian, we'll start with you. What are you wearing? What's in the glass?
What's in the glass? What am I wearing? Well, we'll start with on the wrist is it's going to be a bit of a surprise. It's a Foster 11 Atmos skin diver.
Really?
Yeah, I know, surprising.
Huh.
I'll throw you guys a little curveball there. Yeah, black dial. Been wearing that quite a bit lately. And then in the glass, a little bit of Smith and Cross rum. I don't know if you guys have had this before.
No.
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's
okay.
a sipper,
Is
not a
it-
mixer.
Is it funky? What do we got going on there?
Yeah, it's a little funky. It's kind of got some less sweet. It's almost like a whiskey. I mean, it's pretty strong notes coming through that. Yeah, it's the most distinct rum I think I've had.
No kidding.
Yeah, not super smooth, not super sweet. So not really for mixing. It's throw a cube in there and just slowly sip on it.
You're amongst friends.
Yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely. Everett, what you got?
So, I also, unsurprisingly, wearing a
What?
Foster
You
11.
guys, you
Atmos
coordinated.
diver.
I swear.
Mind blown.
We talked
Hey,
right
you
before
trying
the
to sell me
episode, make
something?
sure. We probably would.
Yeah. What are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking Uncle Nearest 1856. So this is actually a super interesting company. I hadn't heard of this. It's a company out of Tennessee, and I won't go into the details. I'll recommend folks Google this because
It's a
I'll
great story.
mess it up. But essentially started by the great perhaps granddaughter of the first master distiller, and by all accounts, the person who taught Jack Daniels everything he knew about distilling. And so, a slave, this person was a slave. And it's a fantastic story. I've just cracked this bottle and I've just tried it. It is a big fucking whiskey. But so far, so good.
It's been
You were saving
always
that
getting great
bottle for-
reviews.
I'm gonna say you were saving that bottle for a special occasion, right? And this just
Yeah,
happened.
well, no, I got it yesterday. So I was saving it.
Yes, he was saving it for a special occasion tomorrow.
You ran out once you heard about this interview. You're like, I gotta mark the occasion. I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So from our crew, Joe.
All right. On the wrist is the venerable Caravel 6651. Trying to get my best skin diver on in honor of our special guests.
Also in a black dial.
In a black dial. We
Yeah.
didn't coordinate that part. That's just how it comes. I didn't have options. There were no dial
It's a West Coast thing, apparently.
Well, it's thinning, and black is the new black. And then out of my brand new cask of cups, I have the Coquito, the Mike's family recipe. that has
Nice.
been doctored significantly with
You're welcome.
The cinnamon
of
toast
libation.
crunch, right?
no coconut milk, coconut cream, coconut rum, coconut something else, and then lots of other rum and brandy and
Yeah,
rum.
it's a
I don't know. I like Mike's name better. Like that sounds appetizing. Whatever you just said, no.
Ooh, you say that, sir. Get you to the bottom of one of these.
Oh,
yeah, right. All right, Casey, what you got?
I am hugging my loved ones before this one watch challenge starts. So I got my Explorer One, got it on a pretty subdued regular leather strap, and again black dial. So we coordinated that. I used telepathy, and I'm drinking Victory. This is a Merry Monkey. Because I've got all the class of a chimpanzee, so let her rip.
Nice.
So apparently I'm the only one that's going to interject some color into this cloud of darkness that y'all have brought to the show this evening. I am wearing, I don't know who was on Instagram earlier today, but somebody commented on my Keyboard Timex, so I decided to throw this one on.
That was me.
When I got home. This is the Timex collab, the soccer timer watch. On the what would you call it, a maroon and blue NATO. It also comes with a single pass leather black strap, but I like this. I'm all about the color.
Yeah, those are
And-
awesome.
That it's a wild dial. I love that. I love that.
It's
4500
it's
dial.
different. It's real cool.
fantastic.
I tell you what, and you guys did an episode not that long ago on 40 and 20. Timex is killing it with their designs. We've
They
said
really
it
are.
on more than one occasion on this show. They are just knocking them out of the park one after another.
Yeah, that's right. I've talked a lot about the Timex Expedition North. I think it's a fantastic sort of staple watch for Timex. They attach that to the Q Timex, and I think in perhaps the Marlin, but they've got an increasingly big core, and the things they're doing at the periphery is just super cool too. I love what Timex is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I slowly am obtaining more and more as time goes on. So Joe and I were huge Bulova fans. Casey, we all met through that Bulova space. He's kind of going a different direction a little bit with a 7-watch collection. But every time I get a new Timex, I feel dirty. I feel like I cheated.
Well, someone said they like. I think it was Casey that said they like ABC watches, meaning Acura, Bulova, Caravel, or Accutron, Bulova,
Yeah,
Caravel.
there you
And
go.
I thought,
Yeah.
I just feel like Timex should go in there. I just feel like they should, but they don't for obvious reasons.
Oh, wow.
In
Okay.
ABCT.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. It's less catchy for sure.
Yeah, right. I too am drinking Coquito. It is not the family recipe. This was made by somebody else. They made the world's strongest Coquito, so I had to water it down with some extra milk in here, but still strong nonetheless. We'll see how well I talk towards the end of this interview.
Perfect.
So that said, let's get started. Again, Everett and Christian, you guys are the minds behind Foster Watch Company. If you guys are listening and don't know who Foster Watch is, press pause, go look them on the internet, go look at them on Instagram, wherever you're going to find them at. Take a look. They
OscarWatches.com.
have just released in just within the last month. You guys came out on Christmas Day with the release, Thanksgiving Day.
That's right. Technically Thanksgiving Day. Yeah.
Thanksgiving Day. So this is you call it the 11 Atmos. It's a skin diver. But before we get too much into the watch, tell us who Foster is. What's your origin story? How did this come about? And what roles do you guys play within the company?
Yeah, Everett is the brains. I'm the brawn. I think that's how we have it parceled out. Yeah.
And Christian's brawny too. He's brawny.
Clearly. Does YouTube add extra muscle weight? Is that what I'm hoping?
Yeah, we got the filter
Fingers
going
crossed.
right now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You look like a cat. It's funny.
Yeah, we're still kind of deciphering roles and getting that kind of parceled out as we go. We're kind of, as we're getting into it, discovering all the different things that need to be done. And then it's, right now, a lot of it's doing things together. So whether that's like responding to people on email or Instagram, or if it's working on QC on watches, it's been a lot of like, we're both just kind of jumping in ad hoc, getting everything done. I think long-term, we're going to try to parcel that out and have some more clearly defined divisions of responsibilities. But in the grand scheme, Everett is the, he's the watch designer. That's his design. This was his, this particular watch was his idea. The next watch in the queue is his idea and his design. And then I think I'm probably more like biz ops is more my role behind the scenes, getting all the little business details lined out and getting the website built and things like that.
So how did this all come about?
How drunk were you?
We were not sober.
Yeah, we were on the way. Yeah.
Every good idea starts with alcohol.
I'm gonna add something to what Christian says. So he's just very nicely, in the nicest way possible, said he has been carrying this load at a disproportionate level. Christian does everything. Look, this guy has been, doing the lion's share of our social media, our communications with people. Jobs being what they are, sometimes you're busier. This is not either of our full-time gigs. And so he's been pulling the lion's share of the weight, and he wouldn't say that, but I have not been pulling my weight. So I'm very thankful to have him. And I want to say something else. Christian said, I am the watch designer. He says I'm the brains. And I think that I'm sort of the fellow with the ideas, but we've been really working together on design from day one. I think I tend to be the person that starts the idea on paper, and then we've been working really closely. There are a lot of design decisions that get made in a team like this that seem like they're coming from one place because I'm maybe on the software making the changes, but I think we've worked really closely together on, well, I like this, I'm kind of thinking about this, here's a design thing I'd like to see. And so it's been, really, it's been a team, the design aspect. So Christian's not giving himself quite enough credit. He is the biz ops guy. He's doing all the design, and he's, really leading the charge on our communications. So in some ways, it is really been a team effort. When Christian says he'd like to sort of parcel it out, I think he's saying, Everett, you need to do more, which is fair. Being in watches now for many years, I'm not sure, Mike, you had mentioned it, but I'm not sure if your listeners are familiar, but I've got a podcast that I've been doing with my friend Andrew now for, we're at 220 episodes or something like this. So well into our 5th year at this point of doing this thing. And a year before that, really kind of planning this out and deciding what we wanted to do. So I've been doing watches. I've been into watches for at least that long and a little longer. And as you sort of come into the space, everybody's got ideas about what they would like to see. Every forum is full of people saying, if only they could do this, or if only they could do that. And so I think it's in the back of every watch person's head. Well, if I could just have the watch that I wanted, it would look something like this. And this was that watch. This was the watch that I wanted. And so having this opportunity has been huge, and really Christian is the one that was able to sort of find that thing in me, and pull it out and turn it into a business, right? Because it's one thing to have an idea and it's another thing to have a business. And this is sort of like that, that meme that's like, have an idea, ... get rich.
Profit,
we haven't,
right?
we're still in the, profit. We're still in the middle. Obviously, we're not quite at that bottom line yet, but Christian's been the idea force behind that. This is how we've gotten. I was just a guy who had an idea of a watch that I would love to have someday, and from there, it's been Christian's understanding of business and frankly, ability to help us capitalize this thing that's made it happen.
So is two guys from very different backgrounds in watches, because Christian, it's my understanding that prior to this, you weren't really a watch guy, not, to the depth that Everett is. I mean, what's it like coming together?
Well, hang on. Let's spec this out a little bit. Christian, how many watches do you own?
3. Well, I mean, yeah, 3 plus 300, and then we've sold some. So yeah. But
Okay,
but
so
my
your
own
watches.
collection, in my own collection, it's only 3 watches.
Okay. And Everett, how many watches?
I think I'm at like 44 plus 300 minus what we sold.
Okay. I just want to get some perspective. That's good.
Yeah.
But what's it like coming together and starting a brand from these two different backgrounds?
Well, we came into it, with like from our initial conversation when we talked about doing this, which was it came about by, I'm asking Everett more and more questions about the watch world that he is in and his podcast and just about the world of watches and watch enthusiasts. I just was like, man, in the back of my head, I'm like, I bet he's got an idea for a watch in there. So I just asked him, have you ever thought about doing your own watch? And he was like, sure, I know what watch I do. I just didn't think I could ever pull that off. And so then that kind of went from there. And it went from there to like a drawing within the first week or two. And then the process actually was pretty smooth. There was a couple hiccups along the way. Some of the hiccups along the way were more on the financing side from my end. But I think when we look back, like the OEM that we ended up partnering with to get this done, I think did some tremendous work that we weren't even like anticipating, that made everything extra smooth. So things like, we did one prototype, that's it. And we gave feedback on that one prototype. We saw pictures of the next round. We never actually even had a physical second prototype right away. We just saw some images, and then there was still like a couple tweaks. And then the final prototype we got in, we're like, this is perfect. This is what we want. So that was super smooth. Like the dials, coming in, the dials turned out better than we thought. So, I mean, it's been one of the things that people love about these is the sort of, I don't know if you quite call it metallic, but there's like a reflective quality in the dial composition that plays with light really well, which allows these contrasts. So it can be like a really muted in a certain light, and then like almost like it's electric in another light. We didn't plan for that. We didn't ask for that. That was something that just like I don't know who made that decision on their end, but it came out. We're like, this is amazing. We love these. So there's quite a few of those kind of fortuitous decisions that happened somewhere that all worked out really well for the end product.
That's just kind of the stars all came together for you guys.
Yeah, that's right. There's so many decisions you have to make. I mean, even now we're working on a prototype, or we're working on the final plans for our prototype of our second watch. And you think this is all the decisions, and then you realize, well, actually there's a whole bunch of more decisions, and along the way assumptions are made, right? You put in the major posts, and then the rope falls where it falls in between the posts. And I think Christian hit a really good point. We put in these big pieces, and the ropes fell in really good places in between the posts. It's just been a really, and I agree with Christian 100%. That's the fact that we've partnered with really great people. Our manufacturer, I can't say enough about how great they've been, and our factories have been. We hear a lot of horror stories from other brands about factories, fighting with their factories. We've had amazing responses from our factories in terms of, like going back to them on kind of weird things. Like, we want this to be different. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's do that. We can figure that out. It's been great.
Two other pieces, I think, that it was like, there was a point at which the factory told us that we couldn't do the bezel we wanted. And then we kind of pushed back, and then they're like, okay, we went ahead and engineered a new way to do a bezel to get this done, which was crazy. And then the end links was the final piece. They weren't quite right, particularly right the way Everett had envisioned it. Because I'm like, that looks pretty good to me. And then like other people we showed it to are like, that looks pretty good to us. Everett's like, no, that's not right. It needs to be like this. And then they pushed back. And so we pushed back again. And then they were like, oh, well, okay, we'll go ahead and do it the way you want. So yeah, those were probably like the only two issues where we ran into kind of a hitting heads together with the manufacturer. And then they ended up being able to do what we wanted. So it was pretty great.
So I know Joe and KC are both wanting a bit of information, but and we'll kind of jump ahead a little bit here. How do you guys go about picking a manufacturer to do this for you guys? What's the process of choosing somebody? And did you go through more than one somebody, or did you just get lucky on the first person you landed with?
Yeah, Christian, I can take this. So being in the watch world, I've made a lot of relationships with people, folks that we've had on the show, folks that I've met at Wind Up or whatever, and we actually got a lead on a manufacturer pretty early on, and it's not a huge manufacturer, but it's a well-known manufacturer, a company that people use, and we connected with them, and there was a few problems right away. You know, within about the first month, we realized this is not the type of communication we are going to need long term here. There was some language barrier, which is what it is, but it's a thing you have to deal with. And then there was like little things, you know, they told us pretty early on that acrylic crystals were going to limit us in terms of our water resistance. And I can't remember what they said. I think they said really 50 meters of water resistance is the most we're going to be able to do with an acrylic crystal. And it's like, tell that to all of the dive watches that have ever existed.
Yeah, everyone else.
Or like 1975 or whatever, right?
Wow.
And so there was this really kind of front end problem, and we were like, this isn't going to work. And so we interviewed two companies from there, and again, both companies that I had familiarity with through the podcast. And when I say interviewed, like we met with them on Zoom and had a conversation with these people, right? And they were both great. And I think we could have gone with either one and had really, really good results. We made a decision based on just what felt the best. And it was kind of a hard decision because then we liked them both. And I think we chose right. Knowing what we know now, I think that there are some huge advantages to the direction we went. But, you know, without getting into the weeds, because I'll talk about anything I'm at liberty to talk about, but there's some need for a little bit of secrecy. You know, it's a little silly, but we've got KC not showing his face, so I don't feel too bad. So I mean, really, it was relationships that I had formed over the years, and being able to talk to people about what would you do in this situation? What would you be looking at? Who would you be looking at? Getting really good leads, and then being able to use my own information, my own relationships with people to make a decision from there. And I think we really struck gold with our manufacturer. It's fantastic. So a really good situation.
Am I digging too deep if I were to suggest that your manufacturer is in Asia?
No, our manufacturer is here local, probably within about 50 to 100 miles of you in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, really?
So this is an American-made watch.
It is not. No, our factories are in China.
Oh, okay.
So when you're having the discussion, when it comes to design, like you mentioned the language barrier. I know that so much of when we talk design terms, it's particularly in watches, there's a level of French that's involved. There's a level of some German, and because of the Swiss manufacturing techniques and whatever else is involved. I assume that you're then having to translate that and having the translation issue. Was that something you guys were trying to do in-house? Were you using their trip? How did that communication really fly?
No, that hasn't actually really existed for us. Our first manufacturer was in China, was in Asia, and that was the source of the language barrier there, right? A native Chinese speaker and us who are not Chinese speakers. Although I am teaching my kids to speak Chinese so that they can figure this out down the road.
Second generation, it's really important.
Yeah, that's right. But our manufacturer now is located in the United States, and they speak Chinese, right? So they're Americans who speak English to us and speak Chinese to the factories, to their factory relationship. So
Perfect.
we've bridged that gap in that way.
That's fantastic.
Perfect.
That's fantastic, because that, like, you hear that horror story coming from you. Things don't. We missed the moon because we had this problem between miles and kilometers. Same idea,
right?
But
right.
So we've kind of Tarantino'd this episode a little bit here. We've talked about, the manufacturing before the actual watch. So let's go back to the beginning again here. So Everett, you're as we're told, the brains behind the design. You don't have a formal watch background per se, but you have been around many different kinds, many different brands, many different styles and designs, and so on and so forth.
anecdotally, it's fantastic.
Yeah, probably a better education than if you were just with one brand. But what led you to? Well, first off, the 11 Atmos. Run down some specs for us. So, and we'll put some photos on screen for the viewers while you talk about it here a little bit. But just kind of describe what the watch is itself.
Christian, you want to take this?
Yeah, I'm in. I was hoping I'd get called, Coach. Put me in. Yeah, so it is the movement is a Miura 90S5, no date. Let's see the dimensions. It's, what is it, like 11.5? Is that what it is on thickness?
Yeah, 11.5, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, 11.5 with an acrylic dome crystal on there. It is let's see, the dimensions are 48 lug to lug, 39 millimeters wide with a 20 millimeter for the strap. Yes, thanks. Thanks. Yes. I got this.
Doing really well.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and it has a 12-hour bidirectional 48 click bezel. That's one of the very unique features of it. I think that's it, right? It's got technically rated to 110 Atmos, but probably beyond that. But that's where we cut it off.
The idea behind this is a skin diver, sort of your department store skin diver, probably something like a Caravel, perhaps circa 1967 or whatever. The watch that that 30-year-old dude would go to Montgomery Ward's or Sears or name your department store of choice in the late 60s, early 70s and be like, I'm going on vacation. I need to look good. I got a dope mustache. I need a watch that matches it. That's what this watch is, but with modern construction, right? The way we make watches today is so much different. In particular, bracelets, but really cases, crowns, having the ability to do a PVD one-piece stainless steel bezel is something that wouldn't have existed back then. And actually, early ideas for this watch included a resin bezel, so a stamped resin bezel with probably like a steel insert on the underside to do the business on the business side of this thing, and that ultimately, I think ultimately wasn't a great idea, but it quickly sort of was out of the conversation. Yeah, that's right. Well, but that was kind of the idea, right? It's a really cool idea when you look at those Hoyer F1, those plastic Tag Heuer F1s.
Exactly. Yep.
I love those things. I think they're fantastic, but like you mentioned, they go to crap with time. So
when you look at the watch, it is first off, it's beautiful. It is so visually striking. A lot of contrast in a lot of the different elements that you have going on here. but dare I say, at the same time, it's also kind of a minimalist design to a certain degree.
Yeah.
How do you restrain yourself when designing something like this? Because we've had this conversation, and we've, if you were to design a watch, what would you make it and what would you include? Well, it would have to have this, it would have to have that, it would have to look like this, and it would have to have these 5 colors in it, and it
It's
would
either
have to do
either
that
it goes
function,
it either becomes the everything pizza,
yeah.
or it becomes the Rolex Explorer, and it's
Yeah.
that's kind of it, And you guys were managed to sort of hit this really sweet spot where you're harkening back to there's design cues that are there. It's like, okay, I look at this and I can see a little bit of classic Hoyer, I can see a little bit of Seiko, I can see a little bit, but it's still a really concise and precise design language. So
Yeah, I mean, it's your own watch. It's not a homage, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like you design something completely different, which, hats off to you, because so often you get these, startup brands and they don't know what to do, and they come up with something that looks exactly like something that's been done, a million times before. So I
And
mean,
they're probably not trying to rip anybody off. They're just going and they're having fun. And the next thing you know, like Joe said, they got a Rolex Explorer in their hands. It's like, what the hell?
yeah. So when
That's right.
you sit down and put pen to paper, how do you restrain yourself and come up with something so perfect?
Well, I think actually that is kind of the beauty of designing with pen to paper, which we did do that with this watch.
so do you
at
have
least
that
with
napkin still? You have the napkin from the bar?
Yeah. I think I have
Framed?
the paper somewhere, but I have lots of pictures of the paper. But it was actually a design that I drew on paper, and I've got pictures along the way. I think I sent Christian a photo of it, like kind of like I got the outline and then I added some stuff. We've got like the evolution of that first 24 hours of design that I had sent Christian. And so designing a watch that way requires you to put the major pieces in place, but limits you from doing, designing a watch basically at 2-to-1 scale on a piece of paper prohibits you from putting in a lot of flourishes that might ultimately make the watch. And so when we went from that to our initial 2D renders, we didn't add anything. And there wasn't it wasn't super deliberate, but we basically said, make it like this and we'll refine it from here. And when we got those initial drawings back, we're like, this is really good. So one of the things that is notable about this watch is there's no ribbon anglage on the cases. That's a pretty common thing. Everybody does a ribbon anglage because that's just what you do. You make a watch and then you put a ribbon anglage on the top of the case, right? That is part of a watch. And we were like, well, we don't need that. Why would we do that? Why would we disrupt what we've done here with that? And so ultimately, there's no polish anywhere on the case. There's a little bit of polish on the end of the crown. Oops, that's the wrong side. Right there, that's polished. You can see. And then there's a little bit of polish on the clasp right here. But otherwise, there's no polish anywhere on the watch. And that was a decision we made. Like I said, going from that pen paper to those 2D drawings, it's like, we don't need anything there. Let's keep that simple. Let's keep that clean. Same thing with the dial. We drew the dial and we're like, this is what we need. In fact, we made the dial more simple. We made the bezel more simple. We don't need anything on this big, beautiful bezel besides what we have. In fact, we contemplated leaving off the ticks between 12 and 3. But ultimately decided, some people are going to want a certain amount of minute markation. But then, one of the things I like to look at here, you can see this case back. I think that this case back sort of speaks to the entire philosophy of the watch. There's nothing extra here. It just says Foster 11 Atmos Skin Diver. It's got our logo. It's got this beautiful sort of French scroll that goes around it and nothing else. That's it. That's the entire case back. And it just felt right. We got there and it was like, yeah, that's our case back, because that is this watch. It's simple. It's the things you need. It's beautiful. There's some ornamentation there. It's not nothing. It's not sterile.
No, but it's also so classic though. I mean, when you look
Classic
at
and minimal.
right, and when you look at like watches that are watches that were inspirational to this, because you've talked about early 70s, late 60s skin divers. That's the case back. You know,
That's right.
The only thing you're missing on the back of it is anti-magnetic, and that's it. Right.
Mhm.
And it's perfect in pretty much every other sense. So I can't argue that in the slightest.
Well, and we didn't put the movement on there. We didn't put the depth rating. We didn't put 316L because Jesus Christ, who cares?
17 rubies.
We didn't. That's right. We didn't put any of that stuff on there because it doesn't matter. And in fact, it's funny. I think the 90S5 is a fantastic movement. It's like this skeletonized, no date, and I think a lot of people would be screaming it from the sky. And not that we're trying to hide the ball at all, but people sometimes message us and they're saying, "I can't figure out what movement is in this thing," which is more of a byproduct than anything. It's a byproduct of us kind of minimizing. No one's written us yet to say is it 316L, except in jest, I think perhaps. But we don't need to like every watch that's ever come out basically was either 316L or gold or
right.
If Rolex does something different, but like everybody knows what it is, right? We don't need to tell you. We don't need to be so expository, and it messes with the design. So let's skip it.
Yeah.
So the 90S5, is that a hand wound? Is that an automatic?
It's an automatic.
It's an automatic. So hold. You have it there in your hand. Hold it up so we can see the profile again, because I think what amazes me, a lot of the watches that I've seen that use automatic movements are so thick, and you guys have managed to keep it.
You're in about real similar to this. This is from the late 60s. So
you guys have somehow managed to keep it thin with an automatic movement and recess the case back into the case itself.
Yeah,
and that just blows my mind. I mean, that's real. I mean, it's a minimalist design, but that is engineering at its best right there.
Yeah,
I think that's well, as we've said before in other venues, we've been asked what's our favorite elements. Everett's is the bezel, and mine is the case. I think I love that. I love that we created something that from the top down looks like it's not going to be super comfortable to wear. It looks very, very coolish and hard. But the way we've designed the case, the curvature and the recessedness of the case back, it just snugs on the wrist. Like
it looks like it would just wrap right around it. Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels like it's just another appendage on your body.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's part of like that some of that vintage aesthetic that you look at I've got a bunch of divers from the 70s and 60s, and you take a look at that, it's like, it doesn't look like it's going to work. It doesn't look like, and it's really comfortable. They wear well. It's sort of it's become almost a ubiquitous bit of design language that people have moved past, because like, oh, it doesn't look right. It's like, yeah, but have you put one on? Have you worn one? Because it just, even the case of like, you got the serious amount of square anglage as it goes into the lugs, and then the end of the lugs and everything else about it. And to me, some people will be looking at that and say, okay, well, that's slightly inelegant. I'm looking at that's like, no, that's the beauty of the whole thing. It's part of how the case design comes together. It's part of the aesthetic from the time period. To me, it all works. But I'm also,
this guy gets it. He gets it.
Yeah, I get it. But I mean, if you check out my feed on Instagram, that's all I've got. I don't have much else, so I don't have a whole lot of choice surrounding this.
Yeah, no, I mean that's right. When we talk about the Accutron Bulova Caravel era, this is a watch out of that era. This is a watch out of those. Yeah. Those are kind of the design philosophies that have influenced most heavily this watch.
So the next few questions, I think we're going to put Christian in the hot seat here for a little bit.
All right.
Yes.
Are you ready? So
right.
This is not a crowd-funded project. That's right. a bold move for a startup.
That was like it's actually, that was something that Everett was pretty insistent on. If we're going to do this, we're not going to crowdfund it. I think having been around long enough and seen several startups go that route. The downsides, I think, for him outweighed the upsides of being able to, get the capital you need to get going. Because we wanted to be able to have something that when people bought it, they got it like within a week. Except for like our friend in Canada who the package never arrived and we had to resend it.
See,
But
that's-
everybody
that's
else
why
gets it within a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I hate
Canada.
international
Yeah.
shipping.
Yeah, well, that's been this whole other thing that's been fun to learn as we're doing all this. But yeah, I think the goal was we want people to buy it and get it. And I think the big plus side for that is the momentum. It's been able to help with momentum, right? So we launched. Everett did a really good job, I think, tapping into his network and folks that he knows to get us some early publicity. And then that second wave. So we had a handful of reviews come out right when we launched. And then within a week, all of a sudden people are posting their own wrist shots and unboxing shots and things like that, which just continue that momentum. I think that was huge, being able to do that. So huge in terms of being able to like make people happy and like having a really positive experience with our brand right out of the gate. But then being able to have like another wave of, publicity that comes just with people getting it, open it up, put it on, taking a picture.
So we talked earlier about, us, and we joked that we wing it on the show here, but was this something that you guys, kind of followed that, or did you seek the advice of a different brand and kind of follow somebody's model, or is this all, you guys from start to finish, all your own ideas?
I think for the most part, it's been us. We do have some folks, particularly the folks we're working with on the manufacturing side, that we do bounce ideas off, and they give us recommendations on what they would do or what they have seen that's been successful. But I think by and large, it's like we kind of have had a plan since the get-go, and we've been following that plan.
You've really
and
kept
it's not
your own
totally
counsel.
defined, but it's I think our long-term plan is we want to spend the next year and a half just kind of organically, slowly building momentum, getting the second watch done and out, trying to gear up for next holiday season, maybe having a second run of the original Skin Diver watch, but kind of let that just kind of organically build, and then leveraging that momentum to start making some bigger moves in terms of marketing.
There's not many other people that you're not running a design past a panel. It's not, let me throw this out on a poll of some sort and see what people think.
No, we do have that. Everett has that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a yes and no, right? It's pretty informal. I do what I call alpha testing on our designs, which is basically sending screenshots to a number of my friends and then being willing to listen to the things they say and, considering those comments. It's everything from hand length to, marker size and orientation. We got some comments. I solicited some comments on the bezel design kind of early on. So those kind of things. But I've got a small network of people that I've developed organically through 40 and 20. They're my friends, right? This isn't a transactional relationship. These people are my friends, and I'm able to rely on these friends who just so happen to be super knowledgeable about watches to say, what do you think of this? I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think of this? I've talked about this on one other show, and I don't think I called the person out, but I'm gonna name him in this show. There's a fellow named Chris Vale who owns a company called Nth Watches, who's very prolific on Watch You Seek. And he's an enigmatic fellow. I think it is a fine way to describe him. Without it's a neutral term, but he said in a comment at some point I think it was his own thread, that people often ask him, I'd like to start a watch brand. What should I do? He's subsequently, I think, started his microbrand university, which is a fun thing. I might question the actual value of that, but I've not done it, and so I can't comment on it. But he said something, and it really stuck with me. He said the best way to start a watch brand or any brand is to become a part of the community, right? So what community are you going into? Become a part of this community, and then make the decision to start a brand. Don't make the decision until you're part of that community, and then use that community that you've become a part of to guide your decisions once you've made the decision to start the company. And there's nothing been deliberate about 40 and 20 or Watch Click or anything. It's not like I've been, angling all this time, like, ha ha ha. But it just so happened that I became part of a community, and that community has been tremendous. We cannot overstate the impact being part of the community. I'll refer to it as the Watch Click or 40 and 20 family. There's been no shortage of impact that's had on our ability to carry this out as successfully as we have.
And your guys we'll just call it marketing program, right? To post these pictures on Instagram, and that community to pick these up and reshare and share in their stories or put on their own feeds or whatever has been phenomenal. And I think
that's really kind to call it a program.
But because I didn't know who Foster Watch Company was through Foster Watch Company. I found out through a reshare, on somebody's story, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. What is that? And then so I started going and clicking, and it wasn't even till beyond that I realized, who was behind it and where it came from and all that kind of stuff. So
But to piggyback on what Mike was saying, it's the same thing. I saw a picture of your watch from a meetup that I didn't get to go to. And it showed up down here in Orange County. And somebody's like, oh, look. I'm like, ooh, what is that? Which it starts that.
We were at that meetup.
I know. Apparently you were. And I was busy.
But I mean, that just, like you said, you're part of the community. Just, it speaks volumes for what people, A, think of you guys, and B, think of your product to have. I mean, it spread like wildfire. It really did. Your photos went across the internet like crazy. And by the time you come out with the release, if you didn't know what it was, or if you haven't seen it, you've lived under a rock, because it made the rounds.
Yeah. And I think that just speaking to what Everett just got done explaining in terms of moving into a community, becoming part of a community, right? Like I as someone who's come out and kind of hitched his wagon to this thoroughbred horse over here, like getting to come to these meetups and see all this, right? I guess put it this way, Everett has spent 4 or 5 years creating a lot of goodwill in the community. And so I think when people know, oh, this is Everett's project, that automatically piques people's interests and gets them to take a close look at what's going on. So that's been huge. I mean, that's been that's our marketing. That's our marketing plan to date, right? Is like leveraging that. We've sold about 100 watches so far, and I would say that at least 2/3 or like 3/4 of those people are those people that were excited for this to come out. And then I think, we're going to continue to get momentum of then the ripple effects of that coming out from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think your reputation is everything, right? So if you go to sell something and you don't have a reputation, or if you already have a negative reputation, obviously it's not going to go very far. But the fact that you gentlemen are relatively upstanding to my knowledge, it speaks volumes, right? So when this watch comes across, you're like, all right, this isn't some random piece of junk someone's trying to push. Who is Everett? Who's Christian? They're watch enthusiasts. So you can there's a base level of trust from that.
Well, there's a base level of trust, but then there's also this little bit, it's like, oh, he put his money where his mouth is. All right.
Well,
show me what you got.
What it is, it's a watch for the watch fam by the watch fam, and that I think is what really hits home with everybody.
Yeah, I think people, and I think we feel that, like we're the amount of like fun banter that happens in the DMs on Instagram, I think speaks to that people are just excited. Like it feels like we're just building friendships with people, right? It doesn't feel super transactional. It feels very collegial in the way that we're interacting with everybody.
And that's got to make it fun for you guys too. I mean, it's more than just a project. We got to move these out the door. We got to hit these, these numbers. We got to get them sold. I mean, it adds that extra element of enjoyment for you guys. You don't want to say, hey, I want you guys to like our watches, but you like hearing that positive feedback from everybody. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, we do, and the reality is that the transactional piece of this does exist. We need to sell watches, right? We've got to sell the watches, or our wives are going to be mad. In particular, Christian's wife, for good reason, So yeah, I mean, both things exist, and so there's no pressure right now that we're feeling like, oh gosh, this has to happen or else, and that comes from our ability to have been able to put the money down, and to know they'll sell eventually. We're going to sell the watches, right? And so that's not scary, but also we want to be a watch brand. We want to do this. We want to be a brand that releases a watch and people are excited about it, and then buy it and give us their money.
You want to make watches that are attainable? I thought you had to put out a watch and there was a waiting list. That's how this is done.
We would love it. I'll be honest. I would love it. I would love it if there was a waiting list.
Well, that's the crowdfunding. That's the pre-order system,
right?
There you go. Hey, how many watches have you bought with us before, huh?
Right. We can't give you the black dial, but we can give you this lovely pink dial. And if you buy 2 of those, we'll put you on the list.
15 millimeters, but hey, look, it wears large. Don't worry.
We're talking selling the watch. What are people? What are they paying for this? What's your price point?
$500.
$500. Okay. When you set out to do this project, did you have that price point in mind and say, we're going to create a watch $500 or less, or after everything was all said and done, that's where it fell within the price range? How did you come up with that?
We wanted to do one less than this. I think we were actually aiming for like, if we could get a watch done for like 350, 400.
Yeah, $299 was the original target for this watch.
It's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then
we'll
we
put it
realized,
on a strap.
Yeah. Well, it just became completely unfeasible, and then in fact, we're probably priced $150 lower than we ought to be priced, based off of conversations with a handful of other brand owners that have watches that they know our specs and where their prices are at. And so, yeah, but we just felt like we couldn't go over 500 when we launched. We just felt like that was super important to keep it at that.
Right. And I think one of the things that is lost when a customer looks at a watch is you need to think about the time and effort it took for that watch to even come into existence. So yes, you're paying for a physical watch, but you also need to reimburse the person that brought it into existence for their time and effort.
We're looking at where you guys are coming from, the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Like all of your R&D, it's right there.
I'll put in the legwork, and it's got to get compensated. Nothing's free.
Yeah.
But this to me, go ahead, Everett.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that it's a little bit more than that, right? It's more than being reimbursed for time and effort, but that is what it comes down to, right? Ultimately, it's what we want is we want to be a successful company. We don't want to be a watch that I made to give to my friends, because you could do that and have no markup, right? It's like or minimal markup. Yeah. We're trying to be a company, a brand that makes products, and so, for instance, how do we fund our second watch? Well, we need to make some money. in order to
Right.
fund our second watch. And
Mhm.
and how do we, right now I have worked at my job 70 hours per week for 2 weeks in a row. And that doesn't include Foster, right? And so if we're going to be successful, eventually we're going to have to invest time into this, which means replacing other income. And so there's
Right.
these real considerations. We have to be selling X amount of watches per day, per week, per month, per year in order to sustain
Continue to
food on
sell
the
X
table.
amount of watches per week, per month, per year. You're right.
And to keep going as a business. So we've been fairly deliberate at this point about knowing what those marks are, but there's a reality. We have to profit on every watch, and we haven't profited on every watch. In fact, there have been watches that we've not made a profit on right now, which is not to say we're not making a profit. We are making a profit. We're making a decent profit for right now. It's squeezed, as Christian mentioned, because we're really trying to communicate with people, get the message out. But eventually, we need to have those things. One of the things that we've talked about a lot, and one of the things that I think I can provide to the community, because this isn't altruistic, and I don't feel too bad about saying that, but I do think that there can be an aspect of this thing that is a net gain for the community. I don't think we've seen another person who's come from kind of the media or the podcast or the blogger side or whatever, who's done quite what we're doing. There's been some folks who have done similar things, but I'm in a position where when I'm wearing my 40 and 20 hat, it's a literal hat, by the way. I am communicating to people about these things. I love to tell people like how the sausage is made from other brands, and now I'm a brand, and I can tell people those things, and I want to tell people, and we've talked about this with our manufacturer and amongst each other, Christian and I. There's no downside to that. There's no downside to telling people the Tropic strap that comes for free with your watch is purchased from an AliExpress seller who signed it for us, right? There's no downside to telling people these things, right? This is how you make
level
watch.
is high though, like the amount of transparency. But again, like if you're starting out, you might as well. It doesn't hurt.
No,
no damage
it doesn't
there.
hurt at all. People love it too. They
But
love
it's
it.
value added selling. It's the old sales adage.
Yeah, we make our watches in China. Yeah, we right? Like, yes, like there's no.
And look, it
downside.
doesn't. It's not going to fall apart when you get it wet. This is fantastic.
That's right. People already know, and so the fact that we're not pulling the wool over anyone's eyes, I think, is a value that we can provide to our customers.
It's not
and
an
to the
in-house
industry as a whole.
movement.
Yeah. No, we did not make these.
It's not even a manufacturer's caliber.
So not an in-house movement. So here's another thing. This is also what you're getting for your $500 that you're paying. There is a photo of I believe it's Everett sitting at the table, and you QC these by hand, and you regulate them by hand. It's not a production thing. You guys get these in, and then you open them up, and you take the process further. I mean, who else does that? You don't hear that from many brands,
It is a pain in the
No,
ass. It's fun though. It's fun. We grind like that was. So what was crazy is I had to leave Thanksgiving week to go with my family with my wife's family and to be with them for Thanksgiving in Florida, right? And so we launched on Black Friday. So I'm like gone. So we was like this pressure to like get everything ready so that Everett could launch for him while I was gone. So we got into it, and this, I mean, I think we learned more than we learned more in that like 1 week of trying to prep, I think, than we did in the prior 2 years leading up to that. Just in terms of what we didn't know, what we hadn't anticipated, in terms of how much work that was going to be to get all of those QC, to get them all regulated. Tons of stuff we would have done over differently the next time we do this. But yeah, it was a grind, but it was kind of fun being in that grind. Like
super fun.
it was like 3 or 4 days in a row where Everett and I are staying up super late at night at his office, just winding watches, taking them apart, regulating them, doing all this stuff, putting them into packaging. And yeah, and we know that there's ways to, outsource that or hire like a team to do that QC and regulation, but we keep thinking maybe we don't want to do that. Like, we want to get our hands on all of them. We want to make sure we're touching every watch that goes out, that we have put our stamp on it, that it's good to go. And there was things, because we had a lot of pressure. This is like, in terms of transparency, the clasps on a lot of these were really tight. And then that's been the one constant negative in terms of reviews. The clasps were too tight. And it was like this, holy crap, what do we do? A lot of these are way too tight. And we kind of like the ones that are real tight, we'll set aside and fix them. And I think we let some go out, and some of the ones that went to reviewers before we actually did some of this QC process. So the ones that went to the early reviews weren't even regulated yet. We just were getting them out to people, and we have a fix for that now. It takes like 10 seconds, but we didn't at the time. So it's like things like that we wouldn't have known that if we had just used some outsourced team to do that work for us. They probably wouldn't even have checked that and just sent it through.
Yeah, but for you guys, the satisfaction you get for getting hands-on with your own product, and not only putting your money where your mouth is, but putting your hands in and really being a part of it, it's just cool.
Hey,
it's
look,
cool because
we had to take a break in the middle of QC. We had to stop, shut down, go to the pharmacy and get second skin to put on our fingers, because we had literally worn through our skin winding watches. I've wound watches. Try winding 300 watches in a matter of 2 days, and it's not like just give them a shake and click to get it going. You've got to run it to get the amplitude high enough to accurately gauge. So you're winding each watch like 65 times, right? We had to stop to go get medical products to heal our bodies so that we could keep going. And that's a little dramatic, and I'm obviously presenting it. I'm being bombastic, but seriously,
gloves, right?
I don't think gloves would work.
Yeah,
Christian at one point was looking at like a little stick that you put on the ground and press a button.
I was like, is there some kind of thing that you can put it in, like an electric screwdriver, and I can just
exactly.
like wind them?
Screwdriver with an adjustable chuck. Get that on there. Boom.
and you'll forget. You'll be in conversation. You'll break a mainspring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right,
so we learned the proper way to wind it, so you're not rubbing your skin all down. We got all the tools. There was a ton of tools we've ordered since we started this process that we were like, oh, I guess we actually need this and we need that, and so
yeah, watch modding. You can get away.
tool.
You can get away with the Alibaba JAXA tool if you're modding occasionally. If you're opening up 100 case packs in a day, you need the real version tool, and it's $300.
Right.
But you gotta have it.
Right.
Yeah. Can I mention one more thing about the pricing? And I think this is like super interesting, which is why I want to talk about it. Everett is because he's dialed into the community, very dialed in a lot of like the message boards about watches and like Reddit forums and things like that. And so there was a lot. I think part of the reason the watch turned out, I think, as good as it did too, is because there's this, like, I've seen what happens when somebody floats a watch out here that they haven't done their homework, right? Like, they just get chewed up. And so I think this fear, like, we don't want to get chewed to pieces on these forums. We need to be super thoughtful and careful. The interest. So on the one hand, it's this great motivator to do a really thorough job on your design to make sure everything's up to spec. But what's interesting in terms of business models and pricing is I'm reading these forums. I'm like, I don't think these people have a clue how a business works.
Oh, no. So they do not.
No.
Yeah. Because I'm like, there's this like expectation that like you should, we'll give you $25 per watch as profit. I mean, that should be sufficient for you guys. If you're doing anything more than that, you're just ripping us off. And it's like, but that's not how businesses work, right? Business, like, you have to have a certain level of markup that's never profit. it's just all the other expenses that go into a business. And especially if you start marketing, that's where your main budget goes to. If you want to grow beyond a hobby into like a real business that's doing real volume on sales, you have to have that markup to pay to get exposure, to pay to get in front of people and all that other stuff. And so
I'm sorry, Christian, but that's just not sexy. And no one wants to talk
It's
about
not
that.
sexy.
It's not sexy
It's
at
not
all.
sexy.
I
No,
want to know how I
it's
can
not.
get
Do
the
it
watch
for the
for
boys.
free. Can you put it in one of those claw machines? Can I just grab one? What?
Exactly.
I'll drop $25 for that. No
Do it
problem.
for the boys or don't do it at all.
Right?
So it's an interesting question because that, and as someone who's still new to the scene, I'm still trying to parse out where the different, the different groups of people are, because I don't know that the forum people is everybody in the enthusiast world, but it's a factor, right? And so you want to, it's a tough balancing act to like, we want to be transparent. We want to do something that is really good that people aren't, when they see it, going to immediately pick apart everything that we do. We know that you're not going to please everybody and that people are going to be like, acrylic crystals, screw it, I'm out, like forget it, right? Or whatever. But also then to be able to like price it at a point where like that's going to allow us to grow as a business. So it's a very interesting balancing act trying to pull all that stuff off.
Always.
So
always.
let's talk about feedback real quick here. You guys are getting a lot of positive reviews and positive feedback, and everybody's praising you for having such a great first release. But are you getting some of that negative side of it? Are there things that people are like, oh, you guys should have done this, and oh,
what's your
I don't
pushback?
like that, and yeah, what are you receiving on the negative end?
Acrylic crystal.
Yep.
Japanese
That's it.
movement.
And no, nobody's on our ass about the movement.
Okay.
I think our movement is fine.
It is. There's no reason to talk about, to poo-poo that at the slightest.
Is that a
But
challenge? Because I can complain. I'm the master of biatching. Everett knows. Someone who's enlisted knows how to biatch, okay?
No, it's been the clasp, which is a real problem, right? We sent out probably 30 or 40 watches with clasps that were tight. And that hurts a little bit. That stings a little bit because it's something we should have caught and we didn't. And by and large, everybody's been super cool about it, right? We've had a couple that we've been able to sort of coach people through loosening. I mean, it's not a complicated, right? It's a metal tab that just needs to be opened a little bit, and you can do it with vice grips. We use brass pliers when we do it in house because they won't scratch the stainless. But I mean, you could do it with a chopstick. Or whatever. It is not a complicated fix, but it sucks. It sucks that we didn't catch it, right? And it hurts a little bit. It's been one of the things. But other than that, we've had, I would say, almost no negative feedback. We get the people.
Yeah,
we get the people in the forums that are like, "Oh, $500 acrylic crystal watch." Or a 38.5 millimeter diver, blah. That's fine. We knew that was going to happen, and it's okay, right? Everybody's entitled to their position and opinion regarding, sapphire is superior in so many ways to acrylic. I get it. I really, really do get it. We wanted to do acrylic for this watch, and so we did it we knew 2.5 years ago that was going to be a criticism, and it's okay. We're fine with
there's a reason why when you go into an Omega boutique to go buy a Speedmaster, they ask you Hestelite or crystal or sapphire, right?
Yeah. Because
there's a certain charm to having an acrylic crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it's a selling point. It absolutely is.
Oh yeah,
I love it
too.
Because you can buff it. Come on.
Right?
Yeah.
I know something's happening to that crystal. I know it. Now I'm not so worried.
Stand by.
I'm a hashtag Hezzy boy for life. Yeah, I love it.
Well, where Joe and I are in the vintage space, so deeply. I mean, 99% of our watches is acrylic crystals. So I for one appreciate the choice that you made there. Absolutely.
Well, I'm to be absolutely honest. Like I just picked up a vintage watch from 1980, and it's got a mineral crystal. I'm like, oh,
that's the only bad choice.
Right.
Yes.
The only bad choice.
Mineral does suck, and I've tried. I've tried the Polywash, the ever-loving crap out of the Seiko. Nothing.
Yeah, nope, ain't happening.
Nope.
Yeah.
So what you guys kind of mentioned it. What kind of stock do you have left? Like how much more do you got to go through?
We have.
You know numbers, Christian?
I don't know hard numbers. We are completely out of the orange dial. We probably have
Surprise.
13, I know,
Yeah.
13 or so green dials left, and then probably like 175 or so black dials.
Yeah, I don't think it's that many blacks. I think we're actually closer to 150 total watches left in our stock. So
I would have thought that
it's-
the black dial would have just gone. It just would have
Well,
gone. Like my money would have been
That's-
on having the orange left over. But I mean, it makes sense. Mike and I were both deep into the orange space. Like we're
Yeah,
I was
that-
in the black dial guy. Hey, you know.
But that was my next question is, did you think the black dial was going to go first more than the other colorways? People
Yes,
love
that's-
color.
Well,
No,
it was my
do love
decision to
color.
order 200 black dials. It was my decision, and Christian will tell everybody. So I'm going to beat him to it. I ordered too many black dials, you guys. But yeah, no. To me, this should be a black dial watch. I don't know why anybody ever buys watches that
Absolutely
don't have a black dial, right? Like the Tudor Black Bay 58 in blue. Give me a black dial, right?
Bro,
I don't know.
all right. Here's what I'm saying,
that-
right? I think the average person likes to just be slightly under the radar, right? You know, I love that, you know, there's certain colorful watches, but the average person is going to wear something that's subdued.
What's going to match my suit? It's not the orange dial.
Right. Well, but your suit will.
Well, I'm different. I'm different. I bought the suit to match the watch. Just saying.
Yeah.
I've worn the orange dial in court, by the way. So,
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, but did you win?
Oh.
yes,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
lose.
Of course he
so,
wins.
yeah.
That's what Everett does. Everett's a winner.
Well, it's because the orange gives you more confidence.
Oh, that's
No,
funny.
it was so we were originally going to do black and gray. And then we got gray dials in and we did not like them. They actually turned out kind of purple, like a
Ooh.
very pastel-y kind of vibe. And we were like, this is no good. And so everyone was thinking, yeah, like black dials, the way to go. People are going to want black. And I had to kind of like beg him, can we please just get some other dials and see what they look like? And so we ordered some, they came in. We spent the afternoon at this local, beer place called the Beer Stein, set up shop on this table and just started taking our prototypes apart and putting the new dials in to see what they look like. And they were like, yeah, these are pretty great. And that was the first time because the black one doesn't have the same reflectiveness. It shifts color in the light as well, but not in the same way as those other ones did. And we got those like, holy cow, these are crazy. And we should have done more. I think what we learned from this is people want the color. The color is what has moved, but I think we should have, with a 300 MOQ, which is what we were dealing with. We probably should have done like 6 colors, and only released like 3 of them, and then had like 3 more that we were going to put out like 2-3 months later, something like that.
Doing a later drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No one will see this video, right?
No.
That
That's nice.
Yeah, so I was going to say there was an early picture of a blue dial.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a brand new picture. So what we're doing is, because we want to get through this inventory, obviously, is we ordered a bunch of new dials. So if you want to talk about getting our hands, into the watches, sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to get a bunch of dials delivered, about 125 of them. And we're going to take 125 watches apart by hand and replace the dials so that we have
Holy cow.
Different
colors
colorway.
ready to go. Yeah.
Man.
Wow.
It's a good thing there's no date function on there.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we ordered hand setting tools because the hand setting tools we had are crap, and we're ready. I mean, we've gone through it. We've started to develop the muscle memory, and we're gonna get our hands dirty and create some options for people, because Christian was right, I was wrong. People want some color, so we've got, I just showed a couple pictures. Christian's probably mad at me, but it's okay.
No.
Give him some more rum. He'll be
I'm
good.
not mad. Yeah, I'm not great. Yeah.
So have you reserved the table at the beer garden yet? Because I know that your sterile work environment's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please bring your dust. Yeah.
So these
probably are a handful of 11 Atmos skin divers out there with a bit of IPA somewhere in the movement, which
So that
I
much
think
better
actually,
for it.
Yeah, that's right. It helps with long-term timekeeping.
Yes.
But that's a possibility. Yeah.
Well, and you have the saliva of the actual creators in there, which for resale value.
That's right.
Basically
That's
like
right.
an autograph. Yeah.
Yeah.
DNA autograph.
The literal.
Hey, yeah, I
blood,
want
blood,
you to
sweat, and
lick the
tears.
rotors of every watch from now on.
So
It's
these
an
aren't-
upsell standpoint.
These aren't limited edition, correct?
Not
There's
per se,
nothing, we've
no.
not sold it. Yeah, nothing that's been limited. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Will there be? I think you kind of hinted towards it at the beginning of this, but will there be a reorder of these, or are we going to just move on to something different?
This has been kind of a interesting conversation that we have included our manufacturing partners in on to try to get their advice. So I'm very much I feel like we have a lot of momentum right now. And so the idea of being completely out of stock scares me a little bit, which I know is very normal for micro bands, which is actually an interesting thing. When I first started getting into this stuff 3 years ago or so, going and looking at micro brand watch companies and being like, wow, that watch is super cool. And then oh, this totally sold out. And it says it might be in the next 9 months. So that's a bummer. I guess I'll look at, a resale marketplace, but, so we're trying to figure that out as a new company that's growing. Do we try to have inventory on hand all the time? Or do we let a model go out of stock and then focus on the next model? So I think the advice we're getting is to focus on the next model. So these probably, if things go well, we'll sell out of these probably by the end of Q1 in 2023. And then it might be this summer before the next release comes out. But then the plan is to reissue a new run of these skin divers as well.
So
right after that.
all hope of obtaining an orange dial is not out of the question yet.
No, it's certainly not. We've got more orange dials coming. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be part of the dial swap. There'll be 25 more orange released in a while.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I'm selling pieces out of my collection. So
All right.
when you get orange dials back
You're
in, let me
supposed
know.
to be, hey, focus in on the end goal. All right, don't get sidetracked.
There it is.
So what's next? You guys have been hinting at a second watch. Is there any information that you'd be willing to share about what we're looking at in the future?
What kind of dress watch is it?
No, look, we've told people this. This is not a secret. Our second watch is the Skin Diver. Is a field watch. It's also going to be in the 11 Atmos line. So the 11 Atmos is a line of watches as opposed to a watch. So when you refer to this, this is the 11 Atmos Skin Diver. Not dissimilar to what Notice has done with their Sector line, but also not exactly the same. Our second watch is going to be the 11 Atmos Field Watch, and we have just finalized our tech drawings on that. We've finalized our dial. We're waiting on our final illustrations, but that's kind of it's not an important part of the prototyping process. And so we expect to start production on those, and we expect to have prototypes of those probably Q1 of 23, and then we kind of know what we're getting into. So assuming prototypes come back A+, we'll be selling those summer of 23, and I'm so excited about this watch. It's a little different than the Skin Diver. It's obviously not a turning bezel. There's no turning bezel. It's a field watch.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to play with this watch. We're going to have 10.5 millimeters of total height, including a double domed acrylic crystal. So it's going to be super thin. The case is going to be very similar to what you get with the Skin Diver, much bigger aperture. It's going to have a very narrow bezel. And so there's going to be a little bit of polish on the Field watch, not a ton, a little bit of polish. I think it's going to be, I'm really excited about this watch. It is.
So
no,
polish on Field
we're
watches? That's
not going to do
like,
a date.
I pick up scratches on the Explorer. I wear it in uniform. So I'm an engineer in the Army, and so I know Everett might have a vague idea what engineers do. It's not quite the
I sure do.
I pick up scratches on the Explorer frequently, and it's a mark of what I've done in the field. So polish on a Field watch, that's the way to go.
Field watch.
It's just going to be a tiny bit of polish. It's not going to be, there's not going to be any ribbon anglage. There's just, we're going to include a little bit of a glint. But yeah, I'm pumped. I think this watch is going to be rad.
You know, leave your mark and let the enemy know where you're at, right? Because who doesn't want to fight?
That's right. We put it in exactly the right place to catch the sun from 250 meters. It'll be perfect. Yeah, the snipers will be all over you.
Bring them on, right? I put my boys out there. We're here for a brawl.
Perfect. Perfect. With the fighting man in mind.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start to wrap things up. Last call, gentlemen. Christian, Everett, you guys have anything that you want to discuss here before we end up letting you go?
Well, so last call. This is like other things, right?
It's kind of yeah. This will seem real familiar.
Is it okay? Is it okay? So I've got a thing I've been using. So I do a lot of math in my job. I'm an attorney, but I'm a real estate attorney, and so I do a lot of loans and amortization and yada yada yada. I've picked up a new toy, and I'm going to show this because we're on video. This is a Hewlett Packard 12C or 12 Charlie calculator, and I bought it because it looks cool. I saw someone using one, and I was like, that looks cool. It's got this like super 80s, 90s vibe to it with the colors and the colorway.
It's not vintage?
And
it's new?
It's brand new. It's brand new. I bought it on Amazon. This thing is, so I was looking for a calculator to do amortization, value of money type equations. And this was the one that came recommended. I got it. I opened it up and I started pressing, and I was like, this thing doesn't work. It's broken. Turns out, so the way we do calculations is what's called infix notation. So if you have a calculator, it's probably an infix notation calculator. This uses a different type of calculation called Polish notation, which I know nothing about, but I've had to figure out how to use it. And it's so cool. It's totally changed the way I set up my math. And this thing, I can enter variables. If you tell me, how much money you have now and how much time and what your interest rate is, super quickly, I can figure out how much money you're going to have at the end of the. This thing's been so fun, and I'm a nerd, right? I'm a nerd. I'm a watch nerd. I like watches, and I also like gadgets. And this is such a gadget. And I got this thing, and I was instantly like, I'm a fucking calculator nerd. I'm going to start a calculator podcast, I think.
That's a level of geekery that I'm a little uncomfortable with, and I teach high school band.
Pocket square? Come on, bro.
So if you deal with value of money, time value of money, things or whatever, you probably know about this already. But if not, I recommend it. It's been a lot of fun. And I pull this thing out 10 times a day, and figuring out how to use it has been a real pleasure, because I thought when I first figured this out, I looked this up and it said, oh, it uses Polish notation. I'm like, that's Polish notation, and I was immediately turned off. I was like, oh no, this is not going to work for me. And so I've had to learn how to do this, and it's been so much fun. I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity. So the Hewlett Packard 12C, I think it's been out for 8 billion years. It's not new, but you can still buy the brand new today. Recommended. That's all I got.
Well, that's pretty cool and all, but can you type out boobies on it? That's really
You can. You
Yeah,
can.
it's the real test.
Trust.
It's the
Yeah.
real test.
I can confirm.
Was that the
It's a-
initial thing? You take it out of the box, and immediately, if it can't perform that, it's a junk calculator.
Yeah.
send
No,
it
I
back.
just send it back for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it's an older code, but it checks out. Yeah.
So I've been thinking, stewing on it a little bit, and I actually do have a last call, super short. I was extremely lucky when the wife and I went up to New York to be able to tour the Bullitt Museum. Holy crap, did that come in super clutch? Because I didn't really think about it. And then, you know, the folks at Bullitt were gracious enough. We got the expletives. Nice. Anyway, that distracts me. That always distracts me.
Usually, yes.
Wow, where
You mean
was
boobies.
I? Anyway, so yeah. So we're in New York. We get to go up to the 29th floor of the Empire State and check out the Bullitt collection, which was awesome. However, like it shouldn't be the Bullitt Museum. It really should be the collection because it's not open to the public, which is what I thought. And I will be
Luckily,
honest,
we know
no
a guy.
No shade.
Yeah,
But if you want
right.
to see a really sick Bullitt collection, I think Joe and Mike probably have that one beat. Like, I'm just gonna say now, what Joe and Mike don't have is not Michael Jackson, but
The Elvis watch.
Elvis's watch. They have, I can't remember his name now. Holy cow! 5-star was he ran Bullitt.
Bradley, Omar Bradley.
Bang! Yes, exactly. So I got to see some of his watches. That was pretty cool. And then I got to play around some prototype watches. I was told not to really say anything until after the holiday season, but there's some pretty sick prototype watches coming out. And I'm like way too excited, so I'm gonna shut my trap hole. But I can tell you right now, the watch will fit better on small wrists like my own. So I still need to process it and put it into a coherent video, and so I'll push it out through the Spring Bar channels on our YouTube. Yeah, so it'll be great. I love that. That was awesome.
Wow. See, I've got I'm a little bit different. Like the biggest issue that the level of jealousy I have for you getting to go to the Bullitt Museum. But like you mentioned it when you sent us a message like, oh, I'm gonna go. Like, okay, cool. Call this person. Like, oh, I gotta wait. It's not open to the public, but if you know the right people, and so you got in, you got like, level of jealousy is pretty high. My issue, my last call, is trying to figure out what watch to wear today, because we're having this discussion and we're talking about skin diver, and it's like, okay, but I've got all of this, like, so do we do color? Where do you go? And trying to hit all of these different quadrants.
With Gary Airplug. Nice.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did, because I felt that hit all of the quadrants that I needed it to. So it was a big discussion.
Yeah,
like,
roger that.
we went back and forth on this a little bit. So, choices were made. So, Mike, how can we get in touch with everyone here?
So this evening we are the Spring Bar Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at the Spring Bar Podcast. You can email us thespringbarpodcast@gmail.com. On a personal level, I am 120 clicks, all spelled out, one long word, 120 clicks. Joe.
I am Watch Taylor Youth, one long word, EUPH at the end. KC.
Yeah, you know the old crusty rusty. I'm at time.hack1636. Definitely give me a follow because I'm clambering my way up after that old Instagram password debacle. Please, show me some sort of dopamine here.
And Christian Everett, how can we reach you as well?
We're at Foster Watch Co.
There it is.
CO.
Simple enough.
Bang, bang.
So, and then Everett, what's the new 40 and 20 Instagram?
The new 40 and 20 Instagram is at 40 and 20 _ watch clicker.
Okay.
Follow it.
All right. See, and I didn't even know that myself, so I'll have to go and give you guys a follow. Yeah.
Also, you can hashtag us at the Spring Bar Podcast. We'd love to see any of your watch shots, any Foster watches out in the wild.
Any
please,
Foster
Yeah, I
please.
Freaking
Click away
pet
on
shots, sock shots, flannel shots, whatever you got.
Yeah,
flannel
no.
shots. That's it. And also
Headless bedroom shots. We're in. Yeah.
Ooh, and then also because we are in the middle of our one watch 1 month challenge, you're going to want to follow all of us individually as much as possible to see if we make it.
All right, guys. Christian, Everett, again, thank you for coming on. It's really been a pleasure to be able to talk to you guys.
Go.
Yep. Thanks,
Yep.
guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks you guys so much for having us.
Dang.
Yep, absolutely.
It was a pleasure.
Gentlemen, until next time, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Tschüss. Bis bald.